Hello, here's our CSCI 380 web programming and interface design. And today's chapter, we're going to talk about what's the document object model. Okay, so when you work on the React.js and then your JS functions, sometimes you need to interact with the contents. Okay, so we need to know. Okay, and also there's some different versions of DOM, and also how can we better utilize it, and then um, knowing what's the advantage of using JS with also the DOM. Okay, there's some like key methods and properties. Okay, we're going to apply. Okay, of course, we'll give you some examples and just like kind of quick revision. So if you remember, like how can we checking if we do have a like function, and then if you want to try to like log it using a try function to checking if this function. Okay, if we're checking if throw the errors if we call it without an arguments, or if this argument is undefined. Okay, so otherwise it should return the given value. So how can we do that? If you remember, we can getting the argument would be the array list, so we can checking the length, or like do we content is using type of, and then what's the undefined, right? So if you remember. If yes, then we're going to like throw it. Okay, we can throw it to let's say no arguments, okay, or undefined arguments. Otherwise, we will return argument. Okay, the first element right here. So if you remember, so here's the where we can do that, and also we have the code right here. So what's the value? Okay, what's the a this array list? Okay, let's say we have an array list, and this array list like the 1 plus 1 was the array plus array. So if we pass it, then what's the array one? So right here. So should be, let's say, after we execute this code, so which one will be the correct answer? Remain the original 1325, or the A contains the 1425, or it becomes an 8 element array, so like 425, 1425, or it's a string 1425, 1425 like this. Be careful because we say the array plus array and assign to it, right? So here's like how we going to interpret. It's going to be the B right here, just like it contains the array 1425 right here. So when we declare, so it's the array. So we just like declare in this way, and then have a new array, and that's it. Okay. If we executing say a new array, and then and then add, okay, is the function. So still nothing. Okay, so because we just adding A1 plus, right? And then array plus array. And because we cannot like interpret, so it's just nothing will happen. And that's it. And for the JavaScript in browser, so it can support the document objects. Like let's say the page start with the wood, okay, document. So this one, and if we adding the function like document the write line, so function, so we can override the content of the loader page. Okay. Of course, if later we have the DOM like the page, then we can use this method. Sometimes you can use a JS function if you want to get a value, replace a value. Okay, then we can use in this way. So it's we can do, and sometimes we will running the script in a web browser. So sometimes we will importing external script. If we're using React.js, we are because um, working in the encapsulated component base. Okay, but for others, like when they develop the HTML, sometimes when you look at the source code, so you see the using the external scripts. Okay, maybe you are not using your own. Sometimes if you want to add some effect, okay, some animation. Okay, transition. Okay, so you're using others like JavaScript or CSS is similar. Okay, of course you can also declare all those like inline JavaScript, like adding the script right here. So adding right here. So we have two different ways to do that. Okay, and for the JavaScript in the browser, so most of the time the inline.js, so can be the invader XML. So the space of the tag like the arrow, so they're illegal. Okay, be careful. And we will put in the offending code like in the C data section. So right here, here's the necessary part. Nowadays kind of like we say fail or somehow, but you just need to know if you see some HTML page have source code look like this, so it's kind of calling is the C data section. This is hiding the XML phaser. Okay, it's a necessary for adding this part and add that function right here. So commenting on this like C data section, it can hide from the JS like engine. Okay, and only the HTML markups with the inline JS. So just like may need it. So if we add like for this part, so we adding it. So be careful if you see something right here come out. So it kind of hiding from the JS engine, but we need to add it for the HTML. So it's for the HTML part. Okay. And this function just a simple checking if this is negative or not, return true or false, right? Okay. And when we need to generating like those like variety in pages, so one of use like we're using JS to create the variety in the web page. Okay. And we also use it to generate new web page content too. Okay. The concept is pretty similar to the React.js we're using, and also we also going to like manipulate and update the content like kind of dynamically in real time. Okay. Of course, the JS we are using right now, the framework also is like doing in real time, like dynamically right now. When we generating the variety in pages, let's say if we have the colors in .js script, and if we are adding the functions to make the tables like of the like random colors, okay, if we want to do it like get hooks, okay, so it's the one of the colors. So or sometimes we define RGB or whatever, okay. So it's the anonymous function, so it construct a reply, okay, and then maybe we adding like two built-in function like math. We can have a math function like for function or random function. So we will return the next like integer like below n, okay, right here. So if you know the ceiling, okay, and 4, okay, and also we try to generate random number between 1 and 0, okay. So it should be 0 point something, okay, always between 1 and 0. Remember, it's a kind of math, and then it's similar to other programming language. So right here we say, okay, we create a function and then give a for function. Okay, so we load it and then give a random and then times for the range, right? So if you remember, this is how we create like how to make the random number like 0 point something becomes a range. And then this one return to the RGB. So we will execute this random function 3 times, 1, 2, 3. So it's a RGB, okay, value. And we try to get the tables. Okay, so this table, and then you see the tag. Okay, start with the table, and every this row, right? We have the tr. Okay, in the tr we have the body. Okay, so we're using td. So it's a structure like creating a table. Okay, we need to start with the table. Okay, so at like the table row. Okay, the t okay, and then the table data. That means that each cell. Okay, so each cell, so we try to define the background color, and then we call the function. So it's like random in the range. So we can pass the range of this color. Okay, and then when we need to close the tag. Okay, and then close the table, and that's it. Here is the how can we generate table. And finally, when we call the get table function, and we need to pass two variables. One is the size. So the first one, okay, we just say getting randomize it, okay, and then times 40, okay, and then plus 1. So we're getting, and then what's the range of it? So we need to get it because you know the RGB, suppose it's 0 to 255. Okay, so that's why we're putting it at 256, okay, right here. Then we can create a table, okay, and then this time white line, okay, white line S, that means like we're adding a table. So if you're interested, I say, okay, you can add a JS script, add it on top, and then create, and then try to see how's the effect it looks like. Okay. And then next, when the document objects model, and then we can apply to face the HTML, also the XML. Okay. And also, you know, even right here, we're using the React.js. Why is named JSX? X also defines the XML, right? So then also the content in the DOM system. So we're going to define the objects and interface to access and manipulate it. Okay. So there are some different versions. Like you start from level 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So the level standards. So DOM 0 is informal. So only applies to HTML doesn't like consider even as a XML. And also the DOM0 views the HTML components they rendered in Windows as a hierarchy. So you need to know. So I talk about. So the DOM object of course we start with the document. So it's a wood element HTML, and then we have an element head. Okay, maybe sometimes if you want to access it, so we can go through all this and then get element. Okay, we need to find which element and then modify the content value. Okay, so we have element body. Okay, if we have the header h1, okay, header, or like we have some like hyperlink. Okay, of course, or the text, so we can access it. Now we can break it down. Let's say if we have the HTML and then we have the HTML head and then body at the depth, and then we have the paragraph. Okay, in this way. So the DOM structure stuff on the document. Okay, so we have the HTML head and body, and then we have the head title. Okay, here's the title value, and then we have the body including the h1, div. Okay, and then we have the ID, right? So div1, okay, div2, and div1 was the p, and there was the value. So here's all the three. Okay, showing. So sometimes if we want to say, what's the DOM0? Suppose the destination, such as like, let's say we need to know the Windows location, okay, the href. So it's the URL like currently load page. So we want to know what's the current page, so we can get it window location, right? And also we have the document form. So it's an array of like forms in documents. So we can get it like, let's say the first index. So it will be the array for object in the first form in the document, okay? Or the form was the element 3. Okay, so like in the index, that means the fourth element, right? Index 3. Okay, so form 1 will be the second form in the document right here. So also we can address the form control using the name attributes to, okay, name form 2. Okay, right here. So we can say document dot form 2. Okay, what's the test 3? Okay, what's the value? So that's how we get the value of it. Because when we work on the components, let's say if you need to build a form, how can we validate the form content? Let's say you need to check on the email. Okay, is it valid emails? If you want to validate the password, make sure the password including the, like, let's say the uppercase, lowercase, digits, or even the length, the minimum length. Okay, so you can use this way. Sometimes you can using the event way, so on change, or like something on click. Okay, anyway, so we can do it. So you can, how can you access all those values? Then you can use the DOM. Okay, so it's really useful when you need to interact with the document object model. Okay, and of course we have the page element scripting. Okay, so including the HTML4, so let the page element, which is the event handler. So that's why we're doing like on change, right? So this value, so we're going to like evaluate this value, so like what the attributes. So we can do it. This one is the called HTML4. So the values of attribute is the script that run when the event occurs with element. So that's what we're doing. And then the simple calculator can be like released this way. So we can do it in this way on change. And then inverse the compute expression value and result, like replace it. So we can do it in this part. And of course, we have more other event handler. If you see, remember some like previous example and more. So we do have the on click, on change. Like sometimes if you want to detect the key press, sometimes when the user log in, right, instead of like use the mouse click on the login button, if you're allowed to like use the enter. Okay, when the user like, hit enter, also we can log in. So we can add the on key press. Okay, or the on the mouse over. So when we move like the pointing device, let's say mouse move on to the element on select. So we try to select some text in the text field. Okay, or there's some hyperlink can be activated by the mouse like over the over event. Okay, when we put it over it. Also on click, we know like click on it or the on change. So if the form controls like lose focus after changing during the focus, so we'll know. Okay, so all this probably you may use like for your project. Okay, so you need to know. And here just I give you an example. So let's say if we put the cursor over, let's say in the burn of the like right here. So what we're going to do, let's say we need to trigger some functions, and then if we like put on it, then how can we do it? And then also how can we change the value of this? Okay, how can we load a new location? So let's say if we like put the cursor on it, I also recommend if you see some example, then you can modify and because like all this you can implement on your React.js, like adding the function. So this one is the one page um JS script, but on your like React.js, you can put the function. Okay, like on top, like above the return. Okay, and then for the return element, you can like using the paragraph. So you can do it. So it's going to work. Okay, so when we go and then we change the link. Okay, you change all these. Of course, you can replace anything. Okay, and the model one. So because the DOM 0, okay, so we'll not allow all the parts of the loaded HTML to be addressed, but for DOM 1, introduce a systematic comprehensive scheme. So that all those like core interface applicable like to any documents. Okay, and also the HTML interface for accessing and manipulating face HTML. Okay, right here. And the nodes in document is like hierarchy, so including the foreign type like documents. Okay, so the whole HTML or XML documents element. Okay, so we talk about like maybe table or TL, the table row right here. You see, or the attributes. Okay, the attribute of elements such as like class, some IDs. Okay, or text or like the data right here. So the entire escape sequence right here. So will be like units. Okay, or some like comments right here. So we can access from the DOM one. And the nodes, like they are kind of like we do have a root node or the leaf node. So they have like one person like child and then parent. Okay, some leaf node. Okay, this is a crucial domain method, including like get element by ID. I believe you're going to use really often. So when you create the attributes and we try to assign an ID. Okay, so let's say if we have the um, maybe some like checkbox or the radio, and then we give an ID, and this is our ID. So we try to assign with unique ID attributes. So if we want to see, okay, when we have an event change, we want to know what's the of this ID. Okay, what's the value? Or sometimes we have the email. Okay, as a like ID is called email. Then I want to know what's the value of this ID. Then we get element by ID. Okay, or sometimes we adding a tag. Okay, give a name tag. So all this is possible can access it. So we call that like DOM1. Also, when we doing the form validation. Okay, so later if I give you the form template, then if you want to integrate, so how can we validation code like can use the DOM address to access like the form element? If you remember, so we have the pathfinder document, the form. Okay, we have two ways to access it. How can we ensure the user has like supply all the essential form details and check the data type of entered in the form? Okay, they are valid values. Okay, sometimes if we are asking for the like DOB, so we don't want to have user input any like string. Okay, input ABC whatever. So also the user can be like warned by a pop-up alert if the errors are found. So we have different way, right? So we can either have a pop-up alert, have a message. Okay, so either way. So this how can we validate? So let's say if we have the example right here, so we have the form, so we have user, so we use the return value, right? So to like check data. So the control is on submission. So we have the on submit, then we will like return the like check data. Okay, we have action like that. This will connect to the PHP as example. Of course, in our lab I show us the happy.js, and I will give you more like slightly more sample code. How can we build the happy.js API server? But because due to the limited time, we cannot really dive too deep about the like the API server. Okay, so we just basically if we can know how to build it is enough. Okay, for the basic stuff. And then you see right here we have the like name and then what's the ID, and then we have the selection, right? So right here, so we have two options. One is like male, females. Okay, but of course you say, oh, we maybe need to give more option. Of course, you feel free to. So and then right here the option, there's sometimes we do have a by default chosen, then we can add a selected. Okay, and then of course we have the input the age. Okay, so you're giving ID and also with the size of it. Okay, and then we have sometimes if you remember we have button like input or setting a button wherever, so it's a submit button, okay? So and then all this will be like when they click on the submit, then we will call the function check data. So right here, so what's the check data doing? Like what's the perform the check? So we will like get element by ID user. So user right here, and then dot value, so we able to get the name. Okay, so if we want to try to check the name, what's the name, make sure it's like if less than 2, okay, or when we here is the regular expression, we try to doing test. Okay, is it uppercase A to Z, lowercase a to z? Okay, so it's like a string. Okay, we have dash, then it will going to match if we test it. So it should be like at least like 2 or more letters. Okay, hyperfinish like space, whatever. So we need to check all this. So it doesn't match, then we return false. Okay, and then of course we will have the get element by ID by age. We get an age, so make sure, so it should be the length shouldn't be 0, right? So make sure they do have input something. And then also the numbers, here's we test with the number, here's another regular expression, test it the age. Okay, so or like if out of too much, like it cannot be negative. Also, it cannot be like over 120, but depends on, okay, so it should be between this range, okay? So otherwise return false, okay? So far, like by default, then if we can pass all this, then it should be true condition. Okay, so at least 2 alphabet letters space or like hyperfins. Okay, or sometimes like at least like 1 more digit between 0 and 120. Okay, so here's the checking. Or later we have more like the tuples. That means that if we remember for the DOM we have like 3, 4, right? Okay, so the specification, so it recommended in 2000, like support the 6 specification, like support from 2. So the core extend functionality, okay, of the DOM1, the core, so over the key, okay, ECMA, scripts binding, and using some examples. And then also we talk about the view, the extension, okay, the DOM2 core. So it's actually by the HTML5 and also the event, generic event system for script. Okay, we have some events. So method add to the event listener and handler. So you see all those are okay. Also all those will be the event listener and handler. Also we have the CS interface. So for dynamic access and update the style sheets. Okay, also we can enable the script control of any style property. So we can update the style. So I give you one example that we can touch with the background color, theme color. Okay, so we should allow to the, and also the HTML has a script access updating the like HTML like documents. Okay, JSX. So it should be, and then the DOM to like travels should let the script like travels like range of content in document. So it should allow to do that. So here's more. And then for the 3, it comes at like 2004. Actually, you see like long time ago, like almost like 21 years ago. So also it supports like 3 specification. So 3 extends the functionality of DOM2, and also we try to extend the relation to the XML, right? And also the for DOM3 we do have load and save, so we can the scripts load and save the XML documents. Okay, so all this cover the serializing the DOM documents into XML. So Kara introduced at the time. So also we have the validation guide script, so updating the page validity, and then also there's some other useful like DOM3. So we lay the specification, including the, let's say, the event builds on functionalities of the DOM2 event. So with some event flows, handler registration, contextual data. Okay, all this also including the XPath like functions to access like through the like XPath expressions. So all this will be like 3 and then DOM4 recommend in 2015. Okay, so it's like consolidated DOM3 and also Slatter API level 2 UI event. Okay, including all this. Also, they also offers like the mutation observers replace the mutation event. So let the DOM like living standards or this. Here's some the API examples, including the like append child. So if you want to add in like the, let's say the some elements as a child invoking the events, okay, so we can append edit. We want to create a new element, so we add a new tag name. So we can add a new element, get attributes, okay, so value of the attribute name or remove child. So if you want to remove it, okay, the element or set attributes, the name, and then what's the value. So we can set the name attribute of the element, so the node property. So we can edit some like child node and node type or node values or parent node, all these. All these will helping us to interact with the DOM. Okay, so actually, you see that kind of extending right from the start from DOM tool and then extend for the JS function. So with a property API, so we're going to use. So it can help us to make it, let's say, dynamically replace the image in page with the new one. How can we do that? So you see, in this function, we just create a new element image or this element, and this image we have attribute. So we have a source, okay, minion.jpg, and then what's the attribute? The elder, so is the description of it, okay, dispersible me, okay, so we're going to adding this picture, okay, and then we try to like access from the documents, get element by tag name. If we add the tag image, okay, so getting it, the first one, the index one, okay, so should be the second element right here. And then with the parent, then the up dot, like parent node. Okay, so if the parent node right here, so we're going to remove the child, it will be the up. Okay, the first one, and then next we'll replace it with the minion. Okay, like this. So that's how can we access with this like API. Okay, how can we get the attributes, remove some like child, and then it set the attribute all this way. You see, that's how can we do it like dynamically replace it. And we can use all these like on your React too. Okay, if you want to do it like some dynamical like actions, okay, update colors, image, whatever, okay, you can do it. Also, we can access using the like inner HTML interface, provide the shortcut, like making the DOM change. We can do it like, let's say we create a E, okay, E will be a document get element by ID image. What's the parent node, okay, later. So either inner HTML, so we can like insert the image source, okay, elder image description right here. Then also we can use the inner HTML to assign. So we can edit a tag. Okay, all these like as a string. Okay, then we can update the content. So you always feel free to add all these and try. So I would recommend you like instead looking for the sample code, create a SP single page and then try to add the function on top, and then in the like return you can add all these elements. So you can try and see what's the result, and then you're feel free to modify certain value. Okay, sometimes change the name. How can you access it? And next we have the face like HTML to DOM subtree to replace Nox children. Okay, so DOM to also add the event listener. So to attach a callback. So for the callback, if you remember, talk about that. So to the like events, okay, so the hover. So this way, a sensitive warning can be set over an image. So right here, we try to set a warning. So we do have a handler. So function getting eventual alerts. Okay, hands off, and we can get the element by ID. Okay, treasure chest. So right here element, and then we can add that event listener. Okay, mouse over, and then we'll pass it is the handler. Okay, so handler will be the function. Okay, popping it. So if the event listen like callback, so if you write callback with the function comma, we put in the callback. So the callback can be like removed by the same argument. So like right here, like unset warning. So element right here, document get element by ID. Okay, treasure chest right here. So right here with the cherry box, then we can remove the event listener. It's the same, make sure the name is the same, and then you can edit and then remove it. So it's a way. So there's a we can attach a callback. So if we need to listen this event, and then we can put it a comma handler. Okay, so it's called a callback. Okay, and next we have some called the CSS selectors and the DOM style. Okay, maybe you see the CSS, maybe you're still not yet quite familiar with the CSS, right? So just have some idea, just letting you know CSS selectors, they use the patterns to match the node in DOM tree structure. select as an API level 1, okay, actually from like 2013. So right now it's kind of like WC recommendation and all these API, okay, and we use the CSS selectors to match the DOM node. So we do have one is called the query selectors or like query data. Oh, so for selector, we're getting the first node match CSS selector argument or the other node, okay, matching the CSS selector argument. So it depends on your need, okay. And the CSS selectors provide powerful way to specific the piece of the DOM to change. An alternative approach will be use the DOM to X path expression. So why not just have some idea what these terms for the DOM to CSS? Okay, right here. So we can add the style property interface to get or set the CSS like to property. Okay, so we can rename the CSS property in JS without using a dash right here. Okay, and also let's say the property like font size, so becomes like the font size just like remove it and then use the uppercase right as right here. So emphasize that text in the page can be like make a larger and smaller with this syntax. We change the font size function, get the query select all. So we change the EM and then when we getting the EM SSS and then if the I is not defined, change it and we try to get the size and then press the point. Okay, so P is the what's the point? Sometimes we can define as a pixel. Sometimes we define as a percentage. So it's each digit. So we just make sure when we go through all the elements, the EM, so we're adding the size like right here when we're passing. So make it larger. Okay. And also we can use that to add style to directive like to the page. So right here we can try to create elements. Okay, style. Okay, if you not familiar, then you just need to know we have a style for declaring the CSS. And then we try to test node. Okay, what's the text node? Will be body. So what the body, we try to find the font. Was it will be 20 pixels, right? And with the font, okay. And then we try to create some like text no more. What's up for the paragraph? So the line height will be 200%. So right here, so we define two, and then we can because we already have a create element style, so we try to append the children. Okay, so what the two children was the TN, and that was a TN1. Okay, so you see TN, TN1. So this will be two children we're going to apply. So we need to like document head. From the head, we can apply child. So here's the apply child function. So you can see we can apply child to different elements right here. Okay, so this is how can we adding style later. And also the DOM to function, we can have a create text node to add the text to load page. So it's also possible. So that like create text node right here. And when we doing debugging, so for the page scripts and like when we try to changing, you see, oh, why it doesn't work? Or like why we couldn't find the expected result, then you can see like, of course, all these like segment code like to be ignored or the error message sent to a JS console. So you can go to like you're using the Google Chrome and then inspect. Okay, so check the console, what's the log. So the console or debugging alert can be found. Okay, also the IE under two, but right here, but already failed. So we just skip it. Also for the Firefox, you can like under the developer, like check the browser console. Okay, all this. And always recommend as a web developer or when you doing the web program, remember always checking the console, also inspect and check. Okay, so right here, so just by telling what's the correct structure. So illegal JS such that if you put like under body script right here, so we need to run the XML script and we what's the problem, what's the log, okay. So it's saying, okay, produce error message alert. So let's say right here, so the banana is undefined. Okay, so what's undefined? So maybe in a Chrome, so it will giving error message. Say it's the JS console uncaught reference error, but then it's not defined like here. Okay, so we don't have any script. Actually, when we define script, actually will be a JS, okay, JavaScript. So we need to make sure it's correct. Okay, JavaScript like with correct syntax. Okay, so all these JS errors are very common in web page. You see a lot. Even you see some web page, it looks fine. We still have some like error. Okay, sometimes maybe they're using other library to it causes error. So it's a good practice to check all this error while like developing the JavaScript. Also, when we load the JavaScript from separate scripts, also need to like debugging. So remember, so when we try to import this is an external JAS script, but we want to import it. But of course, if you're using React.js, maybe you don't have it, but also we need to import, right? So import other libraries, okay, import others. So you will see the error log. So all these are telling you the DOM, so the document object model from the version 1, and onward we try to standardize the objects and the interface for accessing and updating the content, structure, style of loaded HTML and also the XML documents. Okay, so including actually we can apply this concept to our JSX, our VS, right? React.js. So the DOM method is for accessing paths for the web page, including like get attributes, get element by ID, get elements by tag names about the query selector, all these are CSS. So accessing, or how can we update it? For updating the load web page, we can use like set attributes, append child, remove child, create element, event listener, remove event listener. So you may need it, okay? If we need to update sometimes when you always come together because we need to access the paths, okay? And then later we need to update. Sometimes it's like we are not always rendering, or like we need to have more interaction with the user, then we need to update. Okay, and based on user feedback, clicking on something or adding something, okay, we need to access it and update. Okay, also the DOM nodes like property. So how can we access them? Let's say what's the child node? Okay, the node type, the node value, parent node. Okay, when we adding accessing the inner HTML, we want to adding certain type. Okay, all this and style. So for React or like the previous HTML, so we have a slightly different way to access the content that load the web page. We have another alternative way. If let's say we are working on React.js, we may be not really working on it, or we can still like stay on the same method like SS, adding a new tag like in the inner HTML. So they are all possible. So it depends on how you implement your project. Okay. And so far, quickly, we already went through all this. Day was the JS and I worked with DOM. Okay, we talked about some basic structure and then style for HTML documents, and those are method. How can we access, update the web page element, and those are properties. Okay, so remember, and that's it for this lecture. Thank you.